Obama's captivating speech last night, captivating if you're a union member. But what did you make of the speech? What were the thoughts running through your mind while the president was speaking and immediately afterwards?
Well, it's a double-dip stimulus. It's going to be as unsuccessful and unhelpful as the last one was, albeit it'll be half the size. Now, what the president's doing, I think, proves the case, as we've all known as Republicans and conservatives, that the most powerful special interest is big government, and President Obama is its lobbyist. At a time when we are on the precipice of fiscal implosion, the President of the United States is talking about making government bigger. He's talking about more spending. He's talking about more taxes. He's going to wind up with more deficits, more debt, more unemployment, more economic stagnation for the American people. And I know you're young, but people my age have a definition for insanity. It's called the same action under the same circumstances expecting a different result. And so to me, he misses the crux of what the problem is. And he's actually making one of the anchors on our economy, the big government that's imploding around us, even heavier weight to bear.
You mentioned the definition of insanity. People call me insane all the time, but I don't do the same thing over and over again. I'm still trying to find out why exactly I'm insane, but I guess we'll figure that out sooner or later. But I want to talk to you about the president before we talk about how you're going to attempt to beat him and attempt to obviously capture the GOP primary and the hearts of the GOP voters. Do you think that the president has any interest at all, given everything that he's done, all his policies, all the rhetoric, the speech last night where he could have really rallied support around a true, solid, market-friendly, free market approach and included Republicans, not castigated them as he did yesterday in this, move forward? Do you think that he has any interest at all in the private sector outside of taxing and regulating it, which has basically been the MO since day one?
Yeah, well, that is an interest. Unfortunately, it's an interest that's unhelpful to allowing the American people to grow the economy. As you recall, back when he was in a better place in the polling, he talked about how he was going to use government to create the pillars of a new American economy. That fundamentally missed the point, and that the American economy, which is the most prosperous and equitable in human history, was not shaped by bureaucrats in Washington. It was shaped by the hard work and the ingenuity of the American people. Now, when you listen to the speech last night, the president is trying to find every way he can to rewrite history and act as if the government was the one that created the prosperity. That is not the case. And so when he talks about the private sector, he's coming at it from a wrong philosophical paradigm. He's approaching it with an ideological bent to whereby there's some inexhaustible bunch of resources from those who are, quote, fortunate enough to be successful in the United States, as if you won a lottery rather than put sweat equity into the fruits of your labor, and that somehow big government can continue to spend whatever it takes from you. And I think that is one of the reasons that this administration has been so awful in terms of trying to allow the American people to grow us out of a stagnant economy, because he doesn't fundamentally understand the role of the United States government, and he doesn't fundamentally understand the role of the private sector in creating prosperity. And so if I can, and if he's listening to your show, who knows, I'd like to just remind him that our prosperity is from the private sector, not the public sector, and that the people who can only spend what they make should be given the ability to help increase their prosperity and pursue their happiness without a big, massive welfare state, a bunch of redistributionist bureaucrats in Washington trying to continue to take your money and make your decisions for you, because invariably we wind up worse off.
You said a mouthful there. That's why I love bringing you on my show, and every time I bring you on, you have something great to say. Every time you're on Red Eye or any other radio show, you always have something great to say. And I'm not fawning over you, and people might take it the wrong way. But it's rare to hear a politician actually saying what's in his heart and backing it up with facts. And, again, I always talk about policies and not speaking as a partisan. And we're going to get into more policy discussion in a moment, because I know you love that kind of stuff. And you're introducing a new piece of legislation to save our Social Security system. The point you were just making about the government, the federal government, and President Obama spending money that they take in, they're also spending money that they can't take in or they're not taking in unless they literally take every dime that we have. Obviously, that is going to be about $16 trillion in a few weeks, and I think the Senate just approved, 52 to 45 votes to give Obama another $500 billion in borrowing authority, thanks to Senator Mitch McConnell. Thank you very much. But I want to talk about your presidential campaign because I think there's a lot of promise here. I know you weren't at the debate earlier this week, and I'm very upset about that. But you have 5 core principles listed on your website, McCotter2012.com. one thing that you wrote there, I'm surprised the ACLU is not after you. You mentioned, God forbid anybody says that anymore. But you said that it's right there out in the open. It's written in our founding documents. I like that you're bringing it back. You also had 4 other core principles outside of, our liberty comes from God and not the government, which is very, very crucial to understand. Tell us about tell us actually about all the 5 core principles and why you feel that this is the right way, the right message to craft for the American people as you continue your run.
Well, people need to know what your principles are, and as conservatives, sometimes we tend to take for granted that people do know what they are, but I think that you have to put them out there so the public can consider them again. And obviously, these are not mine. These are what we've inherited down throughout the life of our free republic from the founders and from great conservative philosophers. The first one is, as you pointed out, our liberty is from God, not the government. The second is our sovereignty is in ourselves and our souls. It's not in the scepter or the soil. We are the free citizens, free sovereign citizens of our republic. The third one is our security is from strength, surrender or appeasement. The fourth is our prosperity is from the private sector, not the public sector. And the fifth one is our truths are self-evident, not relative. And these are the bases which have served this country well through thick and thin, through difficult times and boon times. And these are the ones that if we follow these principles, are going to get us back on the path to sanity that not only preserves American exceptionalism in the 21st century, but promotes and advances it so that we can again inspire the world with what our free people can achieve.
Now, you want to create a better, more functional government. Now, does that mean, and basically your positioning statement, if I look at it from a business angle, is for an America that works, an America that works for the people, obviously. Now, does that mean keeping the government the way it is today and just making it more effective, putting more bureaucracies together and combining them, having a situation where, the USDA hands out welfare checks like we have now, or do you propose to cut? Is there a certain percentage that you have in mind? What's your platform? What would you do in your first 100 days should you get elected and beat Obama, as a lot of people are rooting for you to do? What would your first 100 days look like?
Well, first, let me just say I'm sorry. I guess we may have the last question. So let me answer it real quick, and I apologize that I have to go after that. But the first thing you have to put up as a disclaimer is exactly as my colleague from Alabama talked about, Mr. Brooks, is we got to make sure we get a Republican House and a Republican Senate. So those first 100 days aren't gridlocked by Harry Reid running the Senate and preventing job creation legislation that would have to come through, or the repeal of things like Obamacare. But if the public entrusts the Republican Party with a majority in the Congress and with the President of the United States, one of the first things you have to do, in my mind, and I do this because I'm pro-life, is the first executive order I'd issue would rescind the President Obama's use of American taxpayer money to provide overseas abortions. I would then immediately start to rein in the regulatory agencies so that the regulatory burden is relieved on the American entrepreneurs and workers, make sure that we bring certainty that this administration will not allow things like the EPA to implement cap and trade without statutory authority or ever under my administration, work to have an all-of-the-above energy strategy, work to have corporate tax relief that is revenue neutral and takes care to repatriate funds that are used, portions of it, for investment here in the United States and for the protection and honoring of their commitments to their workers. I'd make sure that we have a restructuring of the failed Wall Street bailout banks, force them to recapitalize at their expense so we can unclog the credit arteries so that small businesses and entrepreneurs can move us forward. I'd make sure that we always remember that we have brave men and women overseas defending our liberty, expanding it to others, and that we let the enemies of America know, be they tyrants, despots, or totalitarian governments, that the United States will remain a beacon of liberty. We will deal with them as a matter of peace through strength, and that freedom is the wave of the future, regardless of their intent to subjugate their fellow human beings or to terrorize them. Those are the types of things that happened in the McCotter administration right off the bat, and they would be vastly different than what you're seeing out of this administration.